back home. And when they're back home, their mind is back out there in the field. Then they tell everybody, well, I don't ever have time to do anything. No wonder. You're always traveling. You see, there are a lot of people who go to work tomorrow because that's what they did yesterday. But if that's the only reason for going to work tomorrow, then you're not going to be as good tomorrow as you were yesterday, because now you're 2 days older and no closer to the goals which you do not have. You cannot make it as a wandering generality. Oh, you can survive. Anybody who can get out of a telephone booth without written directions on the side can survive. But I'm not talking about survival. I'm talking about winning, and I'm talking about winning big. A number of years ago, to emphasize the wandering generality aspect, Jean-Henri Fabre, the great French naturalist, did a series of experiments with some processionary caterpillars, so named because they follow each other in a procession. He lined them around a flower pot until they formed a never-ending circle. And they started going round and round and round. In the center of the flower pot was some pine needles, which is one of the foods of the processionary caterpillar. 24 hours they went round and round, then 48 hours, then 72 hours. On and on they went. For 7 full days and 7 full nights, they went round and round until they literally dropped dead from starvation and exhaustion. With an abundance of their favorite food 6 inches away, they had starved to death because they confused activity with accomplishment. In your organization, I'll absolutely guarantee it, if you've got a dozen people in your organization, you're going to have at least one person there who is forever busy. I mean, they go here, they go there, they do this, they do that. They're into this, they're into that. And when they get there every day, their desk is piled high. And when they leave every day, the desk is still piled high. And the number of completed tasks which they have accomplished is very minimal. They are wandering generalities. Now let me tell you something, folks. Lack of time is not the difficulty. You know, you hear people talking about, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. The most successful human being on earth does not have one more minute than the most unsuccessful human being has. It is not lack of time that's the problem. It is the lack of direction. Years ago, the great merchant J.C. Penney put it this way: you give me a stock clerk with a goal, and I'll give you a person who will make history. But you give me a person without those goals, and I will show you a stock clerk. You got to have goals. Can you imagine the chairman of the board for a major corporation like, let's say, General Motors, and somebody says to him, they ask the question, how'd you get to be the chairman of the board for General Motors? And he says, well, I just showed up for work, and they started promoting me, and first thing you know, here I am, chairman of the board. Would you believe it if somebody said that when Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man to scale Mount Everest, when he climbed down off that mountain, and somebody came to him and said, Sir Edmund, how'd you climb the tallest mountain in the whole world? Do you really think, he said, well, I was just out walking around. Incredible. And yet there's so many people who think they can make it just by showing up for work and doing the best they can. Well, I'm in favor of both of those. But the best you can includes preparation and planning and direction. Probably the most amazing direction or example I could use, and incidentally, I want to emphasize this, goals work personally. They work for families, they work for companies, and in this example, I will demonstrate that they work for nations. Japan in 1950 was absolutely devastated. They had the highest percentage of their young men whom they had lost in war than any nation in the last 200 years. Their cities had been burned out. Their economy was in an absolute shambles. Now they called a sales meeting. Now I hasten to add that they didn't identify it as a sales meeting, but that's actually what it was. Sales meeting, marketing strategy, you name it. They called the government leaders, the leaders of industry, the leaders in the educational society. They got them all together and they laid out a plan. What can we as a nation do to unify us, to put us together and accomplish an objective that will restore national pride and bring economic prosperity to our land? They finally decided that in the 50s their goal would be to become the #1 nation in the world in the production of textiles. They reached their goal. In 1960 they got together, another sales meeting, and they said, what's our goal this decade? And they decided on the impossible dream. They said, let's become the #1 nation in the world in the production of steel. Now, why is this the impossible dream? Very simple. Japan has no natural resources. They do not have the coal or the petroleum or the iron ore. They were going to have to haul the natural resources, the raw materials, from thousands of miles away into their land. Build those modern steel mills, manufacture a top-grade steel, ship it thousands of miles back, and sell it at a competitive price. Absolutely an impossible dream. But they did not look at what they did not have, which was the natural resources. They looked at what they did have, a willingness to work, a creative society, a nation that was pulling together towards a worthwhile objective. I'm here to tell you they reached their goal. 1970, they had another meeting. They said, in this decade, let's set the goal. And that goal, pure and simply, is we want to become, in this decade, the #1 nation in the world in the production of automobiles. They missed it. 1 year. That's all. In 1980, they set another goal. They said, in this decade, let's become #1 in the world in the production of electronics and computers. Now, I don't need to tell you, ladies